I yield myself such time as I may consume. Americans do not trust Congress. From the highest levels of office, an elected member of this body enabled the fraudulent spending of $32 million out of the pockets of our American people and threw it down the drain to knowingly chase ghosts, all for political gain. This man occupied a position of the highest trust and authority. As chair of the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff launched an all-out political campaign built on baseless distortions against a sitting U.S. president at the expense of every single citizen in this country and the honor of the House of Representatives. With access to sensitive information unavailable to most members of Congress and certainly not accessible to the American people, Schiff abused his privileges claiming to know the truth, while leaving Americans in the dark about this web of lies. Lies so severe that they altered the course of the country forever. The lie that
Gentlelady will suspend. The House is not in order. Members, please take your conversations off the floor.
The lie that President Donald Trump colluded with Russia to steal the 2016 presidential election, revealed to be completely false by numerous investigations, including the Durham report. The lie that the Steele dossier, a folder of falsified and since completely debunked collusions, accusations funded by the Democrat Party, had any shred of credibility. Yet Schiff read it into congressional record as fact. Lies concocted and compiled in a false memo that was used to lie to the FISA court to precipitate domestic spying on U.S. citizen Carter Page, violating American civil liberties. Not only was this egregious abuse of Schiff's privileged access to classified information, but this memo was littered with 17 major mistakes and omissions. The groundless memo violated Carter Page's civil liberties, publicly assassinated his character, and subjected him to multiple abusive, unlawful investigations. Mr. Schiff exploited his position as chair of Intel Committee and every opportunity possible, threatening national security, undermining our duly elected president, and bringing dishonor upon the institution. Perhaps most unforgivable, Schiff ripped apart American families across the country with repeated false narratives. His own political good was served by permanently destroying family relationships and sowing lasting division across our land, which we live with every single day. The perpetrator of this web of deceit became mainstays on cable news, waking up every morning with one goal: to lie, lie, lie to the American people that there was a direct evidence of Russia collusion. Despite transcripts from Schiff's investigation showing that the Director of National Intelligence, former Obama Attorney General, former Attorney General, and FBI Director, to name a few, went on record telling Schiff's committee that there was no direct evidence for his criminal conspiracy. Yet to this day, Schiff actively fundraises off of his exploitation of Americans as if robbing them from the truth and $32 million in taxpayer dollars was not enough. Can anyone in this chamber comprehend this list of crimes and yet somehow believe that there should not be an answer for it? This is not a partisan act. This is not a conservative versus liberal vote. This is a clear vote between right and wrong, and I urge you to do the right thing. I will end with repeating with what I started with. The American people do not trust Congress. The cyclical pattern of lies has worn down the credibility of every institution and every official in the United States government. You see it, I see it. If we run away from this opportunity to hold this man accountable, there is only one fault, and that is of ourselves. We will betray the people who trusted us and sent us here to do the right thing. We will be responsible for the end of any shred of justice in this body, and we will reject the duty that we swore an oath to protect upon taking office. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman reserves. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we meet not to lower the costs of prescription drugs, nor to expand President Biden's infrastructure plan, nor to protect the voting rights of the people, nor to protect the health care choices of women across America, because we know they're definitely not interested in that. No, we meet rather for another stop on the GOP's endless revenge tour against Democrats who dared to tell the truth about Donald Trump and his repeated sellouts and betrayals of the American people over the last 6 years. It's all about Donald Trump tightening his stranglehold over Republicans for the 2024 campaign and driving out anyone who dares to think for himself or herself. But don't take my word for it. Just read Friday's statement by the twice-impeached inciter of insurrection, sexual abuser, defamer of women, and indicted pilferer of national security secrets, war plans, and top secret classified documents himself. On Friday, Trump posted this order to his followers and this unveiled threat to anyone who would dare to defy his control over the GOP. Quote, any Republican voting against Adam Schiff's censure or worse should immediately be primaried, he wrote. The Luna resolution is a weapon of mass distraction from Trump's indictment by a Florida grand jury on 37 federal charges relating to obstruction and unlawful retention of defense information for storing dozens of classified, secret, and top secret documents at his Florida resort, in his bathroom, his bedroom, and beyond, and then refusing repeatedly for more than a year to return any of these official documents to the archives and the FBI. It's amazing to me that they have to change the subject from one of Donald Trump's current offenses against America to one of his older offenses, welcoming Russian interference in the 2016 presidential campaign. Russia repeatedly intervened in the 2016 campaign to help Donald Trump, and that's not a matter of opinion. That's a question of direct positive fact. Special counsel Robert Mueller, the former FBI director, whose report is cited authoritatively by Ms. Luna, found right at the beginning of his report that, quote, the Russian government interfered in the 2016 presidential election in sweeping and systematic fashion. Here's what the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence found in 2017. Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered an influence campaign in 2016 aimed at the U.S. presidential election. The Mueller investigation and the Moscow Project documented more than 250 episodes of collaboration and meetings between Russia and the Trump campaign, including Paul Manafort's repeated passing of campaign secrets, such as polling data to Konstantin Kilimnik, a Russian agent, and the infamous meeting on June 9, 2016 at Trump Tower, led by Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, and Russian lawyer Natalia Veselnitskaya. Senator Marco Rubio, the Florida Republican, stated that the U.S. Senate Bipartisan Select Committee on Intelligence, quote, found irrefutable evidence of Russian meddling in the American campaign. So, the Mueller report, if you read it, makes no pronouncement on collusion, the putative crux of the distinguished gentlelady's complaint, because as Mueller writes, collusion is not a legal offense or a legal concept, and so the whole question of Trump's collusion with Russia is in the realm of opinion. And most Americans would see a lot of collusive activity all the way up to the present day when Donald Trump refuses even to take the side of the Ukrainian people against Vladimir Putin's filthy, bloody imperialist invasion of their country, which has been filled with lies, atrocities, and war crimes. In any event, we don't censure members over a difference of opinion. Mr. Speaker, we're seeing the complete ethical collapse of a once great political party. The Republican Party began as a pro-freedom, anti-racist, pro-immigrant, anti-know-nothing party. It has become an authoritarian cult of personality, taking orders from an inciter of insurrection, a bully and braggart whose rage towards Mike Pence and whose spectacular disrespect for the rule of law endangered not only our entire constitutional order, but everyone in this room. The party of Lincoln and his Lincolnites has become the party of Luna and her Luna followers. Today's madcap antics are an obvious deflection from Trump's deepening legal troubles, his allegedly criminal conduct in pilfering, hoarding, and refusing to return national security documents has caused his own Attorney General, William Barr, to say that, quote, Trump's conduct is indefensible. He's not a victim here. He was totally wrong, and there is no excuse for what he did here. Yesterday, Representative Boebert offered a resolution of impeachment against President Biden. The GOP simply has no ideas for our economy, no ideas for our country, and no idea for our people, but is on an embarrassing revenge tour on behalf of Donald Trump, who treats them like a ventriloquist dummy. I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Florida is recognized.
I yield 2 minutes of my time to the gentleman from Tennessee, Representative Ogles.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you to my colleague and dear friend, Congressman Luna, for leading the charge to hold our Democrat counterparts responsible for their gross misuse of power. Adam Schiff abused his power of chairman of the House Intelligence Committee to create false narratives that were sold to the American people about President Trump. The Mueller report and Durham report both proved that the basis for the so-called Russian collusion investigation was non-existent. The representative from California misled the American people and compromised the interests of the United States of America in service of defeating, persecuting, attacking, and defaming President Donald Trump. Mr. Speaker, he was hasty, he was prejudiced, and he was wrong. It's clear he was concerned for no one but himself in the advancement of the Democratic Party, their political agenda. $32 million later, the American people are left with lies and the obligation to pick up the tab for this boondoggle of a political witch hunt. The representative from California prioritized personal political gain over the interests of our nation, and he more than deserves to be censured by the people's house. The Democratic Party has allowed an invasion on our southern border, where every small town in America is now a border town. Every one of us knows someone that's been poisoned or overdosed because of fentanyl. Illegals are raping and killing people across our country, and what do? They claim to have a solution, and they have none. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for your time. I yield back.
Manager Reserves, gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
I yield to the distinguished gentleman from California, the former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Mr. Schiff, for as much time as he may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
To my Republican colleagues who introduced this resolution, I thank you. You honor me with your enmity. You flatter me with this falsehood. You, who are the authors of a big lie about the last election, must condemn the truth tellers, and I stand proudly before you. Your words tell me that I have been effective in the defense of our democracy, and I am grateful. And yet this false and defamatory resolution comes at a considerable cost to the country and to the Congress. At a moment when millions of people in our home state of California are unable to find a place to live or afford a place to live, Speaker McCarthy chooses to occupy the resources of Congress for 2 straight weeks on this hollow sop to the MAGA crowd. He offers nothing to those who are homeless or addicted to opioids or to millions of college students mired in debt, but this paltry distraction. Donald Trump is under indictment for actions that jeopardize our national security, and McCarthy would spend the nation's time on petty political payback, thinking he can censure or fine Trump's opposition into submission. But I will not yield, not 1 inch. The cost to the Speaker's delinquency is high, but the cost to Congress of this frivolous and yet dangerous resolution may be even higher, as it represents another serious abuse of power. Donald Trump has threatened that any of you that defy him and vote against this partisan resolution will be met by a primary challenge. And he calls for my imprisonment. If a transient majority can punish and attempt to silence members who hold a corrupt president to account, there is no telling what further corruption of office will follow. And I say this to Speaker McCarthy and others who wish to gratify Donald Trump with this act of subservience or bend to his demands. Try as you might to expel me from Congress or silence me with a $16 million fine, you will not succeed. You might as well make it $160 million. You will never deter me from doing my duty. No matter how many false justifications or slanders you level against me, you but indict yourselves. As Liz Cheney said, there will come a day when Donald Trump is gone, but your dishonor will remain. This resolution attacks me for initiating an investigation into Trump campaign solicitation and acceptance of Russian help in the 2016 election, even though the investigation was first led not by me, but by a Republican chairman. It would hold that when you give internal campaign polling data and your polling data to a Russian intelligence operative, while Russian intelligence is helping your campaign, as Trump's campaign chairman did, that you must not call that collusion, though that is its proper name, as the country well knows. It would fine me for the costs of the critically important Mueller investigation into Trump's misconduct, even though the special counsel was appointed by Trump's own Attorney General. It would reprimand me over a flawed FISA application as if I were its author or I was the director of the FBI, and over flaws only discovered years later and by the Inspector General, not Mr. Durham. In short, it would accuse me of omnipotence, the leader of some vast deep state conspiracy, and of course, it is nonsense. But here is the real gravamen of my offense. I led the first impeachment of Donald Trump for one of the most egregious presidential abuses of power in our history. And I led a trial which resulted in the first bipartisan vote to remove a president in history. And I would do so again. I warned that if Trump was not held accountable, he would go on to try to cheat in even worse ways in the next election, and he did, inciting a violent attack on this very Capitol. And after that, I participated in some of the most important hearings in congressional history, hearings that exposed Donald Trump's incitement of a dangerous insurrection to prevent the peaceful transfer of power. My colleagues, if there is cause for censure in this House, and there is, it should be directed at those in this body who sought to overturn a free and fair election. The question, my Republican colleagues, is not why am I the subject of this false resolution for doing my constitutional duty, but why are you not? Why are you not standing beside me, the subject of a similar rebuke for speaking the truth? Why did you not stand up to Donald Trump? Why did you not reject his immorality? Why did you not condemn his dishonesty? Why did you not speak out when his horde attacked this Capitol, or now when he treats the nation's secrets with such carelessness, lawlessness, and disdain? Why did you hide from efforts to hold him accountable? Why were you silent, afraid, unwilling to do your ethical, constitutional duty? Why did you cower? Why did you cower? And why do you still? Will it be said of you that you lack the courage to stand up to the most immoral, unlawful, and unethical president in history, but consoled yourselves by attacking those who did? Today, I wear this partisan vote as a badge of honor, knowing that I have lived my oath, knowing that I have done my duty to hold a dangerous and out-of-control president accountable, and knowing that I would do so again in a heartbeat if the circumstances should ever require it. I thank you, and I yield back.
Members are reminded to direct their remarks to the chair and not each other in the second person. Gentleman reserves. Gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
I yield 2 minutes of my time to the gentlewoman from Illinois, Representative Miller.
Thank you,
Gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Congresswoman Luna, for leading on this resolution. Representative Schiff used his position as the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee to mislead the American people by falsely claiming that there was classified evidence of Russia colluding with President Trump, which was not true. The Mueller report and the Durham report make clear that the Russian collusion hoax was a political lie designed to hurt President Trump and mislead the American people. Representative Schiff used the Intelligence Committee to advance a political narrative against his political opponents, which violated the important nonpartisan tradition of the committee. I am proud to join my colleagues today in holding Representative Schiff accountable for his actions because the American people deserve justice. Thank you, and I yield back.
Manager reserves. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
I recognize the gentleman from California, the chairman of the Democratic Caucus and a former member of the January 6th Select Committee, Mr. Aguilar, for 1 minute.
Gentleman is recognized.
I thank the gentleman from Maryland. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong opposition to the resolution. It is shameful that the temporary Republican majority continue to waste the American people's time with baseless accusations and right-wing conspiracy theories. Instead of joining House Democrats to address gun violence epidemic, we forced a debate on gas stoves and partisan grudges. This resolution today is motivated by the same groups and individuals who to this day promote the lie that the 2020 election was stolen, a lie that Adam Schiff stood up to time and time again. And I've had the privilege of serving alongside Adam in the California delegation and on the January 6th committee. He has never shied away from taking on the toughest fights, and he is not going to be intimidated by anyone, including the former president or his allies. I'm proud to stand with the gentleman from California today and urge my colleagues to join me in opposition to this resolution. Yield back.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Florida is recognized.
I yield 2 minutes of my time to the gentleman from New York, Representative Langworthy.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In this body, we are privileged to serve our districts and do right by the American people. We've been entrusted with a tremendous responsibility that shapes the future of our nation. First and foremost, we must remember that we are not here to serve our own interests or pursue personal agendas. Now, unfortunately, one of the most powerful members of the Democratic caucus, Adam Schiff, abused his role and violated the trust of the American people. As chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Schiff initiated an unfounded investigation into the leftist lies around Russian collusion. This investigation was predicated on nothing more than political propaganda. The Durham report clearly shows that the Russian hoax was manufactured by the left to divide our nation and discredit and derail President Trump's agenda. He not only wasted countless hours of committee work, but he also wasted nearly $32 million in taxpayer dollars. Schiff repeatedly used the authority he was afforded in his position as chairman to lie to the American people to support his political agenda. Even after the Durham report discredited the Russia hoax, he continued to knowingly lie and peddle this false narrative. These actions leave a real and lasting stain on this institution. We cannot allow Representative Schiff to continue to serve in this body with no consequences for the abuse of his power. I urge my colleagues to support this resolution and to send a clear message to the American people that we will hold members of Congress accountable. And I yield back.
Manager reserves. Gentleman from Maryland.
I yield to the gentleman from New York, our minority leader and a member of the First House impeachment team, Mr. Jeffries.
Thank the distinguished gentleman.
Does the gentleman yield 1 minute?
But 1 minute.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank the distinguished gentleman for yielding and for his leadership. I rise today in strong opposition to this fake, phony, and fraudulent censure resolution brought against Adam Schiff, the distinguished gentleman from the great state of California. House Democrats will continue to put people over politics, to fight for lower costs and better paying jobs and safer communities and defend democracy, fight for freedom, build an economy that invests and grows the middle class. This is a do-nothing, Republican-controlled Congress. That is why this censure resolution is on the floor today. Extreme MAGA Republicans have no vision, have no plan, have no agenda to make life better for everyday Americans. House Democrats will continue to work for the people. Clearly, as this resolution demonstrates, extreme MAGA Republicans work for the twice impeached, disgraced former President of the United States of America, the insurrectionist in chief, the extreme puppet master who clearly ordered that this fake, phony, and fraudulent resolution be brought to the floor today after it failed last week. In fact, the Supreme Puppet Master even threatened the other side of the aisle with primaries if they didn't bend the knee. And when he says bend the knee, extreme MAGA Republicans say, how high? Adam Schiff has done nothing wrong. Adam Schiff is a good man. Adam Schiff has served this country with distinction. Adam Schiff served this country well as a federal prosecutor, fighting to keep communities safe. Adam Schiff served this country well as the chair of the House Intelligence Committee, investigating people without fear or favor, including those at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, because he believes in the Constitution and his oath of office. Adam Schiff served this country well as the lead impeachment manager during the first impeachment trial of the former President of the United States, prosecuting his corrupt abuse of power. And yes, Adam Schiff served this country well. In the aftermath of the violent insurrection, pushed back against the big lie told by the puppet master in chief, and participated as a prominent member in the January 6th committee to defend our democracy. Adam Schiff has done nothing wrong. He's worked hard to do right by the American people. But the extreme MAGA Republicans, no vision, no agenda, no plan to make life better for the American people. And so we have this phony, fake, and fraudulent censure resolution. But Adam Schiff will not be silenced. We will not be silenced. House Democrats will not be silenced today. We will not be silenced tomorrow. We will not be silenced next week. We will not be silenced next month. We will not be silenced next year. We will not be silenced this decade. We will not be silenced this century. You will never, ever silence us. We will always do what is right. We will always fight for the Constitution, fight to defend democracy, fight for freedom, and expose your extremism, and continue America's long, necessary, and majestic march toward a more perfect union. Vote no against this phony, fake, and fraudulent censure resolution. I yield back.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from South Carolina, Representative Norman.
The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, thank you, Congresswoman Luna. I proudly stand with Congresswoman Luna to back this censure of a man that has been long overdue. And I'm glad the galleries are now open where people can see firsthand that you cannot get up in front of Congress or the American people and completely deny the truth and continue to spread falsehoods. There is no TV that could have been turned on over the last couple of years when you didn't see Adam Schiff being questioned. Where's your evidence on the Russian collusion? Where is it? He couldn't answer it. It was always coming. He used his position on the Intel Committee. And for those of you who are listening, it's information we don't get as regular Congresspeople. He used his position on the Intel Committee to spread continuous lies with no facts. Now, how did he do that? He had access not only to the most sensitive information, and he did not share the access or facts that backed what he was saying. The trusted and sensitive position as abused by Congressman Schiff to weave purposely falsehoods around the Russian collusion. The Mueller report and the Durham report make clear that the foundations of his investigations were bogus. It showed that the Director of National Intelligence, a former Obama Attorney General, former Deputy Attorney General, and the FBI Director, among others, all told his committee there was no direct evidence of criminal conspiracy. Yet he kept making the same statements that his evidence was coming, and it just never did. Not only did he spread falsehoods that abused his power, he went after a man as Carter Page, who was completely innocent. And the Inspector General Horowitz found 17 major mistakes.
Gentleman's time's expired. Gentlewoman reserves. Gentlewoman yields additional 2 minutes.
Later found 17 major mistakes and omissions which provoked the FISA court presiding judge Rosemary Collyer to state unequivocally the FBI misled FISA. This public smearing of Carter Page as a Russian collaborator and justification of spurious investigations of him were carried out with Representative Schiff's contribution. This is a violation of American civil liberties, and it's the very abuse that should not be warranted in Congress. And all this to spend $32 million on an investigation that went nowhere. It's an insult to the American people. The American people deserve better. And Congressman Luna, I just appreciate you bringing this up. Words have actions. Just because they continue to say it does not make it true. That's the case of what Adam Schiff has done. I yield back.
Gentlewoman reserves. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
I yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Quigley.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I had the honor of serving with the gentleman from California in the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence for 8 years. I had an in-the-ring view of his work. And obviously, it is not what Mr. Schiff did that was wrong. It's what he did so well. And that's what bothers the majority. He defended our country from threats, foreign and domestic. He defended the rule of law, and he defended our democracy at one of its most critical and pivotal points. And he held the ethically and legally challenged former president accountable. But what really gnaws on the majority, what really bothers them, is that Mr. Schiff was way better than anybody on their team at debate, at leadership, at messaging, at legal knowledge. He kicked their ass. He was better, he was more effective, and that still bothers them. They couldn't beat him on the field, so they voted him off. We voted people off committees because they posted threats, not because they can't compete with them.
Gentleman's time's expired. I remind members to refrain from profanity in the remarks. Gentlewoman from Florida.
I yield 2 minutes of my time to the gentleman from Virginia, Representative Good.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you to the gentlelady from Florida for your leadership. Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry to report to my friends on the other side that we are not voting today on whether or not to censure President Trump, but one Adam Schiff. And Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of this censure resolution. Adam Schiff has denigrated the office which he holds and the standards of this very body. The American people, when they elect their representatives, place trust in them, that they will act with honesty and integrity. But Adam Schiff, he had access to our nation's secrets and then intentionally created a web of lies, falsely alleging his tales of foreign interference and Russia collusion. He perpetrated blatant falsehoods publicly, loudly, and repeatedly to the American people. How many times did we hear him claim that he had seen evidence of Russian collusion? He betrayed the trust of the American people. This resolution will censure Schiff for his gross abuse of power, using his position as chairman of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence to access our nation's most sensitive information to then mislead the American people and his colleagues here in this Congress. The other side often speaks of decorum and holding up the integrity of this body. Now it's time for them to put their actions to their words. Will they continue to support the lies promoted by the congressman from California? Or will they vote in favor of maintaining the integrity of this distinguished body? I challenge them to vote today for integrity, to vote for truth, and to vote to censure Adam Schiff in this House. And I yield back.
Manager reserves. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
I yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from New York, Mr. Goldman.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, the distinguished gentleman from Maryland. Boy, is Adam Schiff powerful. He can at once be the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, the special counsel investigating Donald Trump, manage and run the FBI, and be a judge ruling on FISA applications. It is remarkable that he, from his perch in Congress, can do all of that. Of course, he didn't do any of that. All he did was properly impeach the President of the United States for his gross abuse of power. You want to talk about collusion? Let me ask my Republican colleagues, if a campaign manager for a campaign is giving internal information to a Russian intelligence agent, is that collusion? Because that was the once classified information that is now public and now constitutes collusion. And there are so many other issues. There is nothing in this motion, this resolution that
I want to yield
is
the gentleman
true.
an additional 20 seconds.
Gentleman's recognized.
One of my colleagues says, we will hold members accountable. You are the party of George Santos. Who are you holding accountable? The guy is an alleged and acknowledged liar and indicted, and you protect him every day. Don't lecture us with your projection and your defense of Donald Trump. It's pathetic, and it's beneath you, and it's beneath this body, and I yield back.
Gentleman reserves, gentlewoman from Florida.
I yield 2 minutes of my time to the gentleman from California, Representative McClintock.
Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I opposed the original version of this resolution not to defend Mr. Schiff's lies, but to defend the process that exposed those lies. We must never punish speech in this House, only acts. The only way to separate truth from falsehoods or wisdom from folly is free and open debate. And we must never impose excessive fines that would effectively replace the constitutional two-thirds vote for expulsion with a simple majority. But this new version removes the fine, and it focuses instead on specific acts, most particularly the abuse of his position as intelligence chairman by implying he had access to classified information that did not exist, and his placement into the congressional record of the Steele dossier that he knew or should have known was false. I hope, however, that we will hereafter return to the principles of due process that the Democrats stripped from our precedents in the last session. I yield back.
Manager reserves, gentleman from Maryland.
I yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentlelady from California, Ms. Lofgren.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I could go point by point and prove that the resolution is false, but time is short. I'll just say Adam tells the truth. He told the truth when we were managers on the first impeachment that resulted in a bipartisan vote for conviction. He told the truth when we served on the January 6th committee and found that the ex-president was the leader of a plot to overturn the Constitution and the electoral vote. Why is this before us today? Well, the truth hurts, doesn't it? And I think it's before us today because the ex-president has recently been charged with dozens of felonies. I am a former chair of the Ethics Committee. This resolution is a departure from what has been the norm in the Congress in terms of censure. Not only does this resolution disgrace the MAGA Republicans who advanced it, but it also disgraces this institution.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. Gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
I yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from Colorado, Representative Lauren Boebert.
Gentlewoman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my colleague Anna Paulina Luna for leading on this very important issue. Adam Schiff is a complete disgrace to our nation and to our Constitution. He put the American people through 4 years of an endless impeachment hoax that he knew from the beginning was a lie. He represents the worst of permanent Washington, using his position of trust to lie to the American people. He received intelligence briefings that other members and the public did not have access to. And he used this position of trust to lie and to advance his own partisan agenda. Schiff's disgraceful time in Congress has destroyed Americans' faith in our institutions. Today, I am proud to stand with my colleague and friend from Florida, Anna Paulina Luna, to try and undo some of the damage that Adam Schiff has done by finally holding this crook accountable. Today, we are saying enough is enough by censuring him, and referring him to the Ethics Committee. I told the American people that he had proof that the Trump campaign asking the Russians for help in a conspiracy. That was a lie. He claimed that he was not working with anonymous informants during the impeachment hoax. That was a lie. Everyone with common sense knew that Adam Schiff was lying all along, including the Director of National Intelligence, Obama's former Attorney General, the FBI Deputy Director, and more. But Adam Schiff doubled down on his big lie, claiming he had a smoking gun, proof of a conspiracy. But the only conspiracy going on was his conspiracy to defraud the American people by taking down their duly elected president.
I yield 2 minutes to Representative Boebert.
The gentlewoman's recognized.
When Adam Schiff got caught lying, he did what all liars do and tried to cover the truth even more. He even used his taxpayer-funded staff to ask Twitter to censor journalists fact-checking his lies. But Adam Schiff won't get out of this one by calling in a favor. Today, we are holding him accountable and censuring him for his lies to the American people. To restore the trustworthiness of the House of Representatives, every member should vote to censure Adam Schiff so that we can speak with one voice to assure the American people that these lies will not be tolerated. I urge every one of my colleagues with good and decent intentions to vote for this resolution. If Adam Schiff has a shred of human decency left, he would resign from Congress in disgrace. His tombstone should read of his failed career in Congress and should be one word, liar. I yield back.
Gentlewoman reserves, gentleman from Maryland.
I yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Connecticut, Mr. Himes.
Gentleman's recognized.
I thank the Speaker and the gentleman from Maryland. The gentleman from Virginia, I just heard him say that this is not a censure of Donald Trump, and he's right about that, and boy is he right about that, because there is no behavior, not discussion of how he would handle women, not an attack on this Capitol, not the misuse of classified information that will ever result in a peep from the Republican majority, much less a censure of that behavior. This is a question of standing, amongst other things, if that is what you stand upon. As my colleagues pointed out, we don't hear anything about a colleague whose entire campaign and entire resume was built on falsehood. Instead, we hear that Russia was a hoax. Well, folks, I was there. The investigation began by a Republican chairman. It was predicated, and all these investigations were predicated on the fact that a Donald Trump foreign policy aide told the Australian ambassador that they were expecting dirt from the Russians. The most important thing I can say is I sat next to Adam Schiff for years. He is a man of integrity and dignity, and this vote, quite frankly, my colleagues, is a testament to your dignity or lack thereof.
Gentleman, time
I yield
expired.
back. I yield the remainder.
Gentleman reserves, gentlewoman from Florida.
I yield 3 minutes of my time to the gentleman from Georgia, Representative Green.
Gentlewoman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's a lot of things that happen here in Congress, and many of them waste the American people's hard-earned tax dollars. But one of the most outrageous waste of hard-earned tax dollars has been the Russian collusion hoax led by Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff lied to the American people by leading the fake Russian witch hunt against President Trump. He weaponized the House Intelligence Committee to abuse all principles of due process and perpetuate the lies of Russia collusion. And he did that on the media over and over again. His committee conducted approximately 53 interviews during its 2017-2018 Russia probe. These transcripts from the Director of National Intelligence, former Obama Attorney General, former Deputy Attorney General, and the FBI Director, among others, proved that there was zero direct evidence of criminal conspiracy. He not only refused to release these interview transcripts, but he also continued to peddle lies to the American people that Russia interfered in the election. He falsely claimed that Russians offered help. The campaign accepted help. The Russians gave help. And the president made full use of that help when referring to allegations between President Trump and Russia during the 2016 election. In November 2020, he specifically asked Twitter to take action against spreaders of misinformation by removing content that questioned his baseless claims of Russian collusion. The biggest spreader of misinformation was Adam Schiff. As we know, the Mueller report determined there was no criminal collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. Thanks to the Durham report, we know now the entire Russian hoax was bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton and the DNC. During the probe, Schiff also abused his position on the Intel Committee and violated civil liberties by subpoenaing phone records from AT&T and a former Republican colleague on entirely baseless claims. His lies and abuse of power continued during the sham. Hollywood produced January 6th committee witch hunt, where him and his staff doctored a text message between Representative Jim Jordan and former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows to deliberately manipulate information presented to the American people. What a lie. He displayed a graphic of a text message which cut a sentence in half and eliminated the final 2 paragraphs of a detailed legal summary that were contained in the original text message. He did this to peddle more lies to the American people and perpetuate the fake narrative that January 6th was an insurrection, and it was not. And now Adam Schiff is running for Senate.
Gentlewoman yields to...
Thank you.
How much time?
1 minute.
One more minute.
1 more minute. Gentlewoman's recognized.
Thank you. And now Adam Schiff is running for Senate in California. Now, California has a lot of things messed up, and California is not the model that the United States needs. As a matter of fact, their government policies are atrocious. So if California decides to send Adam Schiff to Senate, they will be sending a proven liar, and that's what he's aiming to do. Raise money off of being a liar and running for Senate. I yield back the remainder of my time.
Gentlewoman reserves. Gentleman from Maryland.
I recognize and yield for 1 minute to my colleague from California, Mr. Swalwell.
Gentleman's recognized.
This is not a House floor proceeding. This is a partners meeting of Insurrection LLC. And I asked them, tell me, where was Adam wrong? He said at the first impeachment, can we be confident that Donald Trump will not continue to try and cheat this 2020 election? The answer is no, you can't. You can't trust this president to do the right thing, not for 1 minute, not for one election. He will not change, and you know it. Was he wrong when that president aimed and sent a mob into this chamber and made all of us leave? Was he wrong when he said that Donald Trump has betrayed our national security and he will do so again? And then Donald Trump stole and shared classified information? Was he wrong when he said that? Maybe he was wrong when he said to the country, you are decent. Donald Trump is not who you are. So I ask my colleagues, are you as indecent as Donald Trump? Will you be remembered as footnotes and foot soldiers in history's books that chronicle Donald Trump's corruption? Or will you be as decent as Adam Schiff? I yield back.
Gentleman reserves. Members are reminded to direct their comments to the chair. Gentleman from Florida.
I yield 2 minutes of my time to the gentleman from Florida, Representative Corey Mills.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you so much. Mr. Speaker, I rise in favor of H.Res. 521 to censure and condemn Congressman Adam Schiff. The bottom line is this. Congressman Schiff utilized his position and hid behind classifications to mislead the American people. He abused his congressional authority and security clearance to push his own party's political agenda. This was not meant to be an unbiased jurisdiction of change. This was meant to be a political witch hunt. When members are appointed to select committees on intelligence, they are trusted with privileged information, and other members of the House are taking them for their word. As someone who had worked within the intelligence community, I can tell you that our classifications that we're available to take and read is not to be abused for our own ulterior motives. I hope my colleagues will join Congresswoman Luna to censure and hold Congressman Schiff accountable and to put an end of the waste, fraud, and abuse and the gross neglect in how we take advantage of the American people. With that, I yield back.
Gentlewoman reserves. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I just want to observe that there are dozens of members on our side who have come to stand with Mr. Schiff, and it appears to have been evacuated on the other side. There's nobody standing with the Luna resolution, and I'd like to recognize and yield for 1 minute to Ms. Garcia.
Gentlewoman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, Adam Schiff is tough. Adam Schiff is smart. Adam Schiff gets the job done. And Adam Schiff holds the powerful accountable. And that's exactly why we're here today. Extreme MAGA Republicans are trying to punish our colleague for doing his job, holding the twice impeached, twice indicted former president accountable. The MAGA wing of the Republican Party can't stop Adam. My friend Adam Schiff will always fight to defend our democracy, he will always do what is right. Trump's pals in Congress can create whole committees to defend him. They can try threatening outrageous fines. They can try to outright waste all of our time trying to prop up a man that has threatened our democracy over and over again. It's no surprise that former President Trump was in Miami in a courthouse last week, and we're here today discussing this topic. Mr. Speaker, we've got to stop enabling this nonsense. When the whole House entertains the conspiracy theories, nonsense, and political vendettas, it's the entire GOP that's responsible. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlewoman from Florida. Gentlewoman reserves. Gentleman from Maryland.
I would like to yield 1 minute to the gentlelady from Pennsylvania, Ms. Dean, a member of the second House impeachment team.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in opposition to H.Res. 521 because this is not a serious resolution. This is political theater by the author who clearly was not here to distract from Donald Trump's history of transgressions and now indictments. It's also an attempt to punish Congressman Adam Schiff for effectively holding Trump to account. Congressman Schiff protected us from fascism at home and abroad. First, on the so-called perfect call, Donald Trump withheld a meeting and crucial weapons from President Zelensky to protect Ukraine from Russia unless they gave him dirt on now President Joe Biden. Mr. Schiff stepped up as chairman of the Intelligence Committee and eventually as lead manager to defend against executive corruption. Then, when the former president lost the 2020 election and summoned his supporters to storm this very Capitol, Mr. Schiff stood up again and on the January 6th committee to expose the former president's grotesque role.
I can yield 10 seconds more.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
I don't know why my colleagues are so intimidated here, but I think it reveals their weakness. They are intimidated by a bully, and this censure attempt reveals they are also intimidated by a patriot and the truth. Lucky us to serve with Adam Schiff.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. Gentleman reserves.
Reserve.
Gentlewoman from Florida.
I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Wyoming, Representative Hagman.
Gentlewoman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I take my duties as Wyoming's lone congressional representative very seriously. And my obligation to be honest and trustworthy is the foundation of my ability to carry them out. This privileged resolution isn't about politics. It is about the seriousness of being honest and forthright as a member of Congress and upholding the oath of office that we all take upon being sworn in. It is true that the gentleman from California wouldn't be the first member of Congress to exaggerate or stretch the truth, but willfully lying about serious issues our country has faced is something entirely different. And claiming that a sitting president has committed what amounts to treason is beyond simple hyperbole. This member's lies led to the wasting of millions of taxpayer dollars for unnecessary investigations and the deflection of our attention from the most pressing issues at hand to focus on a made-up crisis. This member's actions were designed to delegitimize the 2016 election and to hamstring the Trump administration. For all the talk about not accepting the election results in 2020, perhaps Democrats and the media, which are mostly one and the same, might want to look at their actions in 2016. To make matters worse, this representative perpetuated these lies while he was chair of the House Intel Committee and consistently implied, if not outright stated, that he had inside information. In that capacity, he lied about how the FBI and DOJ obtained and renewed a FISA warrant. The FBI and DOJ officials did not omit material information from the FISA warrant. How the DOJ used the Steele dossier, what was collected via the FISA warrant, the FBI's vetting process for the Steele dossier, that he had an alleged smoking gun showing that President Trump colluded with Russia. And if each of these claims has proven to be false. But the lies have continued. In fact, they have become compulsive, and they continue right through to this very day. The lies weaken this body, and if left unchecked, threaten the rule of law, our election integrity, and the civil rights of his targets. The words and actions of this member were dangerous and untrue, knowingly untrue. There must be a serious consequence for that. Being censored is the least of what he should be subjected to, and I support this resolution.
Gentlewoman reserves. Gentleman from Maryland.
30 seconds to the distinguished gentleman from California, Mr. Mullen.
Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong opposition to the resolution. This latest stunt reeks of partisan politics and does nothing but advance an extremist agenda. Worst of all, this resolution attacks a great defender of democracy, a member who is among our best. There is a legitimate role for censure in this institution, but the majority has debased it and rendered it meaningless in a cheap partisan slap. Shameful. I yield back.
Reserve.
Woman from Florida.
I yield myself as much time as I may consume. I just wanted to take a second to thank all of my colleagues from across the aisle who have spoken today for putting themselves on the record defending the Russia collusion hoax, even after the Burisma payments to Hunter Biden and the big guy have been made public. The congressional record is a very useful accountability tool. And with that, I yield my time. I reserve my time.
Reserve?
Reserve.
Gentlelady reserves. Gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. They defend the big lie, they defend the insurrection, they defend George Santos, but they attack Adam Schiff. I yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Carson.
Thank you to my dear friend. What I do know, Mr. Speaker, is that Adam Schiff defended the U.S. Constitution. He led an impartial investigation, which followed the facts, which led to the first of 2 impeachments of a former president. As a senior member of the Intel Committee, I've had the honor of working closely with Mr. Schiff for years. He's a man of integrity, and he deeply loves this country like we all do. I urge my colleagues to vote no on this dangerous and purely vindictive attempt to silence someone because of his work to hold Donald Trump accountable. I urge my colleagues not to be fooled by these distractions. Don't ignore the facts. This resolution is a fig leaf to hide the very clear facts about a twice impeached president, a twice indicted ex-president who has put our national security at risk. I urge my colleagues to stop these political games and get back to the business of the American people. I yield back.
Expired.
Reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlewoman from Florida.
I reserve.
Gentlewoman reserves. Gentleman from Maryland.
I'm yielding 1 minute to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern.
Gentleman's recognized.
The chairman of the Rules Committee.
Mr. Speaker, Republicans care more about personal vendettas and sucking up to Trump than about doing what's right for the country. Adam Schiff has been an incredible member of Congress. He exposed Trump's lies and corruption, impeached him, and got a bipartisan conviction vote in the Senate. He's passed real and consequential laws that solve real problems and help real people. And what's the sponsor of this censure done? What's Congressman Luna's record? I want her constituents to know, in her congressional career, 5 out of the 6 legislative items she's ever introduced are about Adam Schiff. I mean, doesn't she have anything better to do? Like, I don't know, help her district? This is what's known as lunacy. And it's all about deflection, retaliation, and distraction from Trump's 37 felony charges. The people who came up with the big lie want to censure Adam Schiff for telling the obvious truth, all so they can defend a 3-time loser ex-president who's been indicted more times than he's been elected. What an embarrassing day for this institution. What an insult to the American people. I urge a no vote, and I stand proudly with Congressman Schiff.
I want to thank the chairman of the Rules Committee for those astute remarks, and I will note that dozens of members of our caucus have come to stand with Mr. Schiff today, while the sponsor of this resolution, Ms. Luna, appears to be completely isolated over on her side of the aisle. I'll reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Florida. Gentlewoman from Florida.
I yield myself as much time as I may consume. I just want to remind people that this is on behalf of the American people in restoring order to the House and in an effort to bring back trust, which is something that this institution has lacked for many years. I'm very proud, and I would like to own my vote in saying that I will be voting for the censure of Adam Schiff, and with that, I yield my time.
Gentlewoman yields. Gentleman will reserve.
I'm yielding.
Gentlewoman reserves. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
I'm yielding 30 seconds to the distinguished gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Krishnamurthy.
Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, in reviewing this censure measure, I'm reminded of Will Rogers' quip, "I don't make jokes, I just watch the government and report the facts." This month, despite the pressing needs of the American people, we've spent a week and a half arguing about gas stoves. Next week it will be about toaster ovens. Today we're voting on a joke of a measure to censure Adam Schiff, a true public servant and patriot. I urge a strong no against this resolution targeting a true American hero.
Gentleman reserves, gentlewoman from Florida. Gentlewoman reserves, gentleman from Maryland.
Yielding 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Crow, a member of the first impeachment team.
Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, here are some facts. Fact number one, Donald Trump remains one of the greatest dangers to our democracy that we have ever seen, and he's a demagogue. Fact number two, demagogues don't like people who call them out, who speak the truth, and pose a threat to their grand designs to destroy our democracy. Fact number three, I've spent my life serving this country in uniform, out of uniform, and I would be hard-pressed to find somebody who's more committed to democracy, who has more integrity, who has more commitment to the rule of law than Adam Schiff. So I call on my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to reject this absurd proposal, to set yourself free from your servitude of Donald Trump so we can move forward as a country. Set yourself free. You know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. I yield back.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlewoman from Florida recognized.
I yield myself as much time as I may consume. As a United States Air Force veteran and a proud Mexican-American woman that happens to be almost 8 months pregnant, I would like to say that in regards to integrity, what happened in this country, what happened with the divide that occurred after the fact that the Russia collusion hoax was pushed down the throats of the American people is not what I would consider integrity. And if we want to talk about these little fun games and comments back and forth, we're here not about Donald Trump, we're not here about January 6th, we are here about the former chairman of the Intelligence Committee that used a lie that broke apart this country. And so with that, I reserve the remainder of my time.
Gentlewoman reserves, gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you. We're here precisely because of Donald Trump, because he wants this retribution exacted against Adam Schiff for standing up against Donald Trump's lies and assaults on American democracy. I want to congratulate the gentlelady on her forthcoming baby. That's awesome news, and I'm wondering if she would share some of her time with me, because I have started to run out of time and she has no speakers over on her side. So consider that. And in the meantime, I'd like to recognize for 1 minute the gentlelady from Colorado, Ms. DeGette. Then I would recognize 1 minute to Mr. Neguse from Colorado. All right, to Mr. Thompson, the chairman of the January 6th Select Committee.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I thank the gentleman for giving me the time. Mr. Speaker, with all the challenges our nation faces today, why are we relitigating the ex-president's first impeachment from 2019? After a similar resolution failed last week, why are extreme MAGA Republicans hijacking this House yet again by devoting precious floor time to attacking my friend and colleague, Adam Schiff? Maybe it has something to do with the fact that the leader of their party is facing trial on 37 felony counts of conspiracy and mishandling of classified documents. The disgraced ex-president even stored some of the nation's most sensitive secrets in the bathroom of his Florida club. These attempts to censor Adam have been orchestrated to distract, but no one is fooled. Extreme MAGA Republicans are targeting Adam because he's everything they wish they could be. He's tough, he's principled, and he's effective. I have stood shoulder to shoulder with Adam in the fight.
I yield the gentleman an additional 10 seconds.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you very much. I'm proud to work that we did on January 6th. It speaks for itself. I yield back.
Gentleman reserves, gentleman from Florida.
I reserve.
Gentlewoman reserves, gentleman from Maryland.
I yield the gentlelady from Pennsylvania, Ms. Scanlon, 30 seconds.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you. I rise to honor the steadfast patriotism and integrity of Adam Schiff. This scurrilous resolution is so dishonest and defamatory that it would justify a lawsuit if it were made anywhere other than the halls of Congress. This is pure political revenge and exposes both the depths to which the House Republican majority has sunk and their threat to our constitutional order. I'd encourage our colleagues to seriously consider how stunts like this bring dishonor upon this House and to condemn it unequivocally. I yield back.
Gentleman reserves.
Gentlelady may reserve.
Gentleman from Florida.
I reserve.
Gentlewoman reserves. Gentleman from Maryland.
I yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentleman from California, Mr. Garcia.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, this resolution is a joke. They are trying to smear Congressman Schiff for his work to defend our institutions. Meanwhile, the same people who attack Adam Schiff for seeking truth refuse to take action against a serial and admitted fraudster in their own conference. Adam Schiff did not win his election on false pretenses. He has not been accused of crimes in the U.S., nor admitted to crimes in Brazil. Unfortunately, not all my House colleagues on the Republican side can say the same. Now, 35 days ago, every House Republican voted to defend George Santos. Instead, they want to censure someone for truth and justice, Adam Schiff. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Florida.
I reserve.
Gentlewoman reserves. Gentleman from Maryland.
I recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Sherman, for 30 seconds.
Gentleman's recognized.
Today is a proud day for California, but particularly for the San Fernando Valley. Hundreds of members of this House did their best to protect America from Donald Trump, but only one did it so well that he is the focus of this ridiculous resolution. He was effective, he was direct, and Donald Trump has demanded that he be attacked. Adam, thank you for doing your job so well. California is proud and America is grateful. I yield back.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlewoman from Florida.
I reserve my time.
Gentlewoman reserves. Gentleman from Maryland.
I yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentleman from Texas, Mr. Castro.
Gentleman's recognized.
Adam Schiff did his job. That's why they're trying to censure him today, because he held a mirror up to today's Republican Party, and they can't stand the ugliness. Instead, they want to protect the most corrupt, indicted, and perhaps soon to be convicted President of the United States. We should vote no on this censure resolution.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlewoman from Florida.
I reserve.
Gentlewoman reserves. Gentleman from Maryland.
I yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentlelady from California, Ms. Pelosi, the former Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Gentlewoman's recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I thank the gentleman for yielding and for his great presentation today. Today, we are on the floor of the House where the other side has turned this chamber, where slavery was abolished, where Medicare and Social Security and everything were instituted, they've turned it into a puppet show. A puppet show, and you know what? The puppeteer, Donald Trump, is shining a light on the strings. You look miserable. You look miserable. The only advantage to all of this is that instead of reversing what we did on the IRA to save the planet, or reversing what we did to reduce the cost of prescription drugs, you're wasting time. Adam Schiff is one of the greatest members of that.
The gentleman's time has expired.
I have
the gentleman's
10
time
more
has expired.
seconds.
The gentlelady's time has expired.
He said his is expired?
The gentleman from Maryland's time has expired.
Okay.
The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
I yield myself as much time as I may consume. Again, I would like to say that this is not about Donald Trump. This is about holding accountability for someone who exploited their official position, had access to information that most members of Congress do not have access to, and bringing accountability back to the American people. So regardless of whatever the gentlewoman from California says or anyone else, you guys are not being honest about the focus of this resolution and this censure, and that is exactly why we're here today, to debate it out. But I thank you. With that, I reserve the rest of my time.
Gentlewoman has the only time remaining.
Yield
Does the
back.
gentleman yield?